Hello everyone, welcome to Real Talk. Today we're going to be talking about Valentine's Day. As we all know, today is Valentine. Valentine's Day and African men. In other words, Western romance and African upbringing as it relates to an African man. Today I'm going to be talking with an African man. He's here to tell us his own perspective about Valentine. Welcome with me, Mazi Uchina.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for your audience for tuning in and listening to this Real Talk with Ola. It's always a pleasure coming here, especially today being Valentine's Day. I see you got your red on.
Yeah, red.
I had to look for my own reds to touch it a little bit on this day and to get in the spirit of Valentine, which is today. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. It's been here before. I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and we had fun.
Travels.
So it's in our archive if you want to go check him out.
Yes, please.
So today we're going directly into the topic. In African settings, as an African child, we were not brought up to express love like the Western world. You know, the way we see our parents, express their love to one another, daddy and mommy, and then to their children. So in what ways were you shown love in your household?
Yeah, thank you. And interestingly, it's nice to start with that question because we have to really separate the differences in culture or the differences in background between the Western world and the African world. I would say leaning towards the Western world, we understand the public display of affection as an expression of love. But in my upbringing and my background, where I came from, just being able to be at home, pray together, work, dad and mom working together in achieving the aims of the family, raising the children, that in itself is love. It's the expression of love. Ensuring that your wife's honor in public and in private is upheld and upheld. I mean, was one of the clear signs that you love this person, because you defend your wife in public, you ensure her honor, her respects are given to her as of when due. I mean, remember the slap that was heard across the world at the Grammys when an African man defended his wife's honor. That in itself was and is, from an African perspective, how we express love. And again, that's why I say if you compare with the Western public display of affection, the kissing, the hugging, the holding hands, that can be added to it.
And the saying too.
And the saying too, I love you.
I love you.
Which, if you look at it from the children's perspective, I remember reading somewhere where somebody said his dad never said he loved him, and that's why he has this, I don't want to call it emotional trauma, but that's down challenges in growing up. However, you've had food on the table, clothing on your back, a roof over your head.
It's more of provision, protection.
Everything was all taken care of him.
Roof over your head.
But he wanted the saying,
yes.
I love you. And again, this could be seen as something from the Western part of the world. But from African perspective, being able to be responsible, protect, provide, all those are the ways.
Submit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we are bringing this into Valentine because we're talking about Valentine. So was Valentine's Day ever a thing in your household or in your community?
Goodness me, no way. And I say that jokingly. But we have to look at the historical background from where we came from. So, for instance, there are 3 areas I will touch on just for the sake of time. Number one, from a Catholic perspective, because we were raised Catholics and we are still Catholics.
Religious belief.
Religious belief. The Catholics have Lenten period.
Yes.
Which sometimes actually falls on Valentine's Day, which is Ash Wednesday.
Wow.
So if the Catholic Church decides to have the Lenten, which is about 50 days of fasting, and that falls within Valentine. There is no way you can be celebrating Valentine's Day when you're fasting and trying to repent from your sins or show remorse. That is one aspect. Number two, we grew up as a semi-agrarian family. That means dad and mom went to work, but we had a side hustle, which is farming. And if you look at the season of Nigeria, by February, you're already having to go back to the farm and cultivate and prepare for the planting season, because you've just come out from the harvesting season. So in terms of having that cash flow to say, oh, I want to go out to shop or buy flowers for my wife, you're thinking of buying seedlings for the next farming period.
Okay, before we go into that, so do you think an African man is taught to provide more than express?
That will be his basic duty, his provision, protection, than expressing. The expression is in the provision, because there is no way, Jennifer Lopez actually put it in one of her songs, My Love Doesn't Cost a Thing, where you can buy her lots of gifts, but you are not at home, you are not there to do your responsibility. It's the spending time. An African man expresses his love by action, which is provision, protection, and the rest of the P's.
Really?
Yeah.
So, do you think an African man is unfairly judged by the expression of love that they weren't raised with?
Well, that's one aspect, but number two is taken to the point where, like, who is judging? On what metrics are you judging?
No.
If you're using a Western approach to judge an African man has no template, has no blueprint for that same judgmental pedestal you're putting him on. And I after living 30 years in Africa and being raised as an African, and coming here and comparing and contrasting, I would say, to answer your question directly, he's been harshly judged. Harshly judged by where he's coming from, what he knows, what he's been brought up with, and you're now saying, come on, bro, you need to change, you need to adapt, you need to adjust. You need to change your ways. Yeah, and it can be a new field, a new experiences for him, but it's not left for the African man to either adapt or Charles Darwin said it, you need to adapt to evolve in order to survive. Yeah.
So, Valentine's Day, we know it's about Lovers' Day, where you go out, you buy stuff for your partner or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. What kind of pressure do you think an African man is being subjected to here? Because when you talk about Valentine, it's all about giving. The man going out of his way to give something to his lover. Yeah. Do you think you feel pressured, and what kind of pressure do you think an African man?
There will be always pressure, because the expectation is there already, and I don't know where that expectation comes from. However, we can look at it two ways and say, first of all, let's look at an African man who is not married and is dating.
Let's talk about the financial and the emotional pressure.
Okay, so an African man who is dating a lady, at that point in time, you can have that conversation with him to say, how do you want him to show up for you financially or emotionally during Valentine? Now, that's where it's key, because he has to unlearn and relearn the way of expressing his love.
Unlearn and relearn.
His love to you. But if you expect him, based on his upbringing, his default setting is that it's just another day of the week and he goes on with his life. But if during the dating period you call his attention and say, oh, this is how I want Valentine's to be done, yeah, good and fine. But there's something you said there that is very important to know, is the way lovers express love between each other themselves. But it has been skewed in a way that it's the expectation of the man to be doing the giving. But where was it written? It's supposed to be lovers sharing gifts during that period. But all of a sudden, it's now financially put on him that he has to do that, a one-way traffic, which shouldn't be so. It's just like wedding anniversary. Nobody said, I give you a gift on my way, you give me. So that's, yeah, exactly. And that should be what it should be in during the
But when you look at it, for a woman giving to a man, I think it is limited. There's the giftings, the women are limited in the giftings. But when you look at the other side, the man giving the woman, there's Loads
There's
of
a
gifts,
plethora of gifts you can get
loads
because
of gifts.
commercially,
So-
the capitalists have really fixated on coming up with lots of gifts that men should or must buy. I mean, the algorithm on your TV would already be flashing.
What about the
Valentine.
emotional side?
Emotional side can really be daunting because there's an expectation. He doesn't know if he's able to meet up with that expectation. Or if I buy her a $250 flower, is that gonna do it? So there's always that doubt creeping here and here in his mind. And if at the end of the day he's not able to be victorious or meet the expectation, it can really be emotionally daunting to an African man.
Emotionally doesn't. Do you think this is why some African men shy away from or they downplay Valentine's? Because some of them do. They don't.
Yeah,
They'll tell you, "I don't celebrate Valentine's. I'm not into Valentine."
I mean, it's an excuse. It's a way of getting out of this quagmire where he's been raised without no notion of Valentine. One of the other, like for me, and this is my own perspective, being raised, aside from being Catholic, being a semi-agrarian, we also were brought up in a suburban area where there was nothing like restaurants or
Wow.
where you buy flowers.
Where you buy flowers.
It's only when we moved to the big cities we started seeing, and that was way back in the 90s before Mr.
But you
Biggs.
have gardens, don't you plant roses?
Oh, will you go plant a garden egg and pluck garden egg flower? Again, but in itself, having been raised in that setting, there's no place to go out. Then in the early 2000s, Mr. Biggs, Spa started coming to Nigeria. Then you had somewhere to go and flowers to now. And you watched a lot of the Western movies and you're like, oh, this is the concept and this is how you... But the men who have been able to find reasonable relationships are the ones who are like, I can learn this new way of expressing love in Valentine. And that is what we expect
That means
men
they
to...
have to go and learn.
Obviously,
Yeah.
in order to sustain a relationship, you can have that conversation with your wife or your partner and learn like, okay, this is what I need to do, or this is their love language, and this is how I need to package the love language and present to them. However, and this is a very key point, it's not only on the side of African men, the emotional and financial.
No, we're talking about African men today.
Okay.
We're not talking
We'll
about
come
the
back to
woman.
it.
So the woman is not here. So in these days of social media, everywhere, you see, Instagram, so Facebook, Twitter, and everything. Do you think it has rubbed on, or how do you think it has affected the expectation of an African man?
Because there's a competition as to the results at the end of the day. Somebody goes on social media and like, oh, this person did that, but my husband or boyfriend did this. Is mine better than his? Or it's the same.
So there's a competition.
Yeah, it's the same challenges we had faced during marriage, where people try to borrow money and do the best of marriage, and
I am bigger than you.
Exactly, you can't have the best wedding, you can't have the worst wedding. You can just have a wedding. And in another 2 weeks, everybody forgets about the wedding, and that emotional and financial risk is actually presented because some of the data we've seen shows that by tomorrow, 15th, 16th of February, there's an uptick year to year in Australia with regards to domestic and family violence, romantic scam, just after Valentine.
After Valentine.
Because for some reason, one of the risks was the emotional stress that people go through in Valentine period. And therefore, the negativity of Valentine just shows up on the 15th and the 16th. However, there's an interesting statistics here because on the 14th of February today, as of last year, about 10 to 18,000 proposals took place in 2025. Matter of fact, Brisbane Registry had the highest number of weddings on Valentine's Day. So that shows you.
Were there any Africans in there?
I was supposed to be one of them, but I moved mine. So I will have been the 32nd couple.
So that's why you know the statistics.
I kept my eyes on that statistics because it shows you that on that day, people want to express love. People want to show love. I'm not sure of the demography of these numbers I have quoted, whether Africans made that number, but it's a very beautiful day to express love, to show love to.
Beautiful. So let's bring it personal. Have you ever been misunderstood?
It's
expressing your love.
It's one of the greatest prayers of every married man, and the song by the Animals, "Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood," it always comes to mind. you sometimes just have that this is the way I want to express love, especially when you've not had that communication. So I remember when I was dating my wife, and
As an example.
I remember when I was dating my wife, and I said, "Oh, today is Valentine fell on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
and I wanted to go to Mount Isa for somebody's wedding, Makai for somebody's wedding." And she's like, "How can you go to somebody's
is
wedding when
Valentine.
today is Valentine?"
Valentine.
And I was like, "It's just another day." Then we did had that conversation, and we then understood the expectation of each other that we need to celebrate it. Lo and behold, the next year, I took her to my wife is Kenya. My wife is Kenya, and she always loves suya or the skewers. And I took her outing for that, and she ate it, and she really loved that day. So I think being misunderstood was because we didn't have that conversation. Now we had that conversation, and we're on the same page that that day was important to her. She needs to be celebrated. And it's always born on the African man to always learn, unlearn, and relearn ways to
learn, unlearn, and relearn. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. So, in learning, unlearning, and relearning, do you think African men are evolving, or the pressure is becoming too much?
That might depend on.
Are they evolving in their
evolution? The evolution will depend on the environment. So, if we look at African men in the Western world as of today, the evolution is fast tracking. It's really going.
It's really going.
Way. If you look at African men in the African setting, it might not be as fast as we expect it to be.
Yeah, but in the diaspora.
In the diaspora, there is that, because obviously your environment
in the Western world, the environment affects
and that day is Saturday. So even if you go shopping to Woolies, there's the flower looking at you. You just grab one.
There's a chocolate table.
Everything is all prepared and packed.
There.
And when I align that or compare it to my upbringing, there was no flour, there's no chocolate.
It's only land for farming.
Exactly. And you have to think about buying seedlings for the next farming. So again, it depends on the African man we're talking about and his environment while he's growing. But I would say with social media, which is the whole point of social media, you can learn things about other worlds.
Yeah.
And you take the good things, you keep away the bad. However, you always do things within your limits, what you are capable of doing.
So, thank you, viewer. We still continue. In your own perspective, how do you think that generational trauma has affected or can affect an African man in a relationship, in expressing their love to their partner?
It can really be a very sensitive conversation, because you're looking at generational trauma impacting on this particular fellow. I would say it can significantly impact, because children or young people do not listen to what you say, they watch what you do, and whatever has traumatized that child will always show up. Hidden behind this adult person is that young boy inflicted by that trauma, still exhibiting those behaviors. So obviously it will significantly shape the way this adult grows into the future and the way they also express love. There is one of the things we've seen in the literature is some of people who have seen an abusive upbringing. We always think that abuse is a form of love, or it comes with a package of love, or the expression of love, or like you go out for Valentine, your parents go out for Valentine, you see your dad drinking too much, beating your mom, you learn that, and you think that that's how Valentine ends at the end of the day, and that way they come up and they show that in their current relationship. So it does significantly impact on childhood trauma. Definitely impacts on adults' expression of love.
African man.
An African expression of love.
African man expression of love.
Yeah.
Is it possible to pinpoint one trauma? Do you think you can?
For personally?
No, generally. Well, for an African person.
For an African person, it will be really difficult, because it's always on an individual basis. You have to know and read the person's file to really understand, like, why is this person behaving like this? So that's for the psychologist and the psychiatrist to
yes. So in what meaningful way have you ever shown or expressed love, even if it is not Valentine's Day? In what meaningful way?
And here is where it comes really beautiful. Every single day, so 365 days in a year, and we just pick out today, Valentine's Day, as, let's just go with that. Today is the day we want to do special love. But the other 364 days in the year,
Yeah.
being present, showing up, assisting in house chores, just being that husband that can be counted upon or reliable, that in itself is an expression of love. If you top it up with the other PDAs and public display of affection, that is also an icing on the cake. But fundamentally, being that man in the house that your children can look up to, your son wants to be like that, your daughter wants to have a husband like that, that in itself is an expression of love that I think even the wife would take gladness or be really appreciative that this man is able to do all these things.
Yes. So what exactly do you think you wish you were taught about love when growing up?
Very much, we didn't have that. We didn't have that conversation, and as I say, as kids, we watch, and from what I watched is what I've learned. So I wouldn't. My dad never sat me down and said.
So what you see
is what I saw was what I have learned.
What you see sticks more than.
Well, nothing was told to me.
Told?
Nothing was told to me. It was what I saw. I give you an example, and again, this was really beautiful. Just to start the way we started. In the beginning, I said, just having family time, praying together, eating together. I was on holiday with my parents 2 years ago, and it was the same thing. We all woke up in the Airbnb, and my mom was like, "Oh, let's all come and pray." And seeing my dad and my mom and us praying as family, that in itself was something that was nostalgic. I was like, wow, that was really beautiful. The other one that made me laugh, it was, I remember back then growing up, my dad will need to dye his hair. And after he dyes his hair, no, he sits down to dye his hair, but my mom helps him
hair
dye. My mom dyes it for him. Then my mom sits down and he dyes her own hair. So there was that service to each other that was just really beautiful. And I would say, largely enough, it's those things I observed while growing up that I've used in my adult life to say, look, helping out around, being in service to my wife and ensuring that everybody in the house is happy.
Beautiful. So what advice would you give women generally trying to understand African men in expressing their love? Those women out there.
Do not unnecessarily raise the temperature of the expectation. It's African men, depending on their background, where they grew up or where they are being raised, just have, number one, have that conversation with him, like how you want to be loved or how you want love to be expressed to you. Then give him a very long rope for him not to hang himself, but for him to learn the ropes properly. Then 3, whatever is presented within his resources, do not put pressure on it. Sometimes it's very much the symbol that he made the decision, he went out of his way, he got, even if it's a $10 Woolies flower, just the intention is what really counts. The intention of it is what really counts. So it might not be the way he hasn't done it the way somebody did it on Instagram or on TikTok, but just accept that he had the right intention. So even if it means that he wakes up in the morning and tells you, oh, just lay in bed, he does the cooking, does the cleaning of the house,
appreciate that,
just like he has decided to pamper you that day.
Appreciate that.
It doesn't have to cost money. As Jennifer Lopez will say, love doesn't cost money. You can do a lot of service that shows your expression of love.
Okay, today is Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And we have some African men who are under pressure right now to go all out. Maybe they don't have the means, maybe they are struggling. What advice would you give to them?
So there are 2 African men that I would want to talk to here. The ones that are still in the game of dating, and have that conversation. Maybe, well, we've missed it this year, but maybe at the end of today's Valentine, you can do whatever you need to do. No pressure, just do the best you can. have that conversation with the lady you're dating to say, how do you want me to show up for you during Valentine? Now, for the married men, the same thing. You must have had this conversation while you're dating to know the boundaries of what you need to do. But if you did not have it, the idea of learning, relearning, and unlearning how to express love comes into be. Just be sincere, be intentional, and try and communicate within one another to see if you've met the requirement, the standard, the expectation. But as Saint Valentine, whose feast we are honoring today, it's just about how do I show up for this person? How do I love this person? Because Valentine gave up his life. So it was like, it should be a day of reflecting more than gifting.
In your own view.
In my own view. It should be a day of reflecting and say, in the last 364 days, how have I showed up to love this person? How can I do more? How can I reinvent myself? How can I evolve based on how things are changing? The gifting should be just
the secondary
or the icing on the cake, but a changed man who is doing more within the house and showing up more should be what's very much priority to me in my own perspective.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much
for coming to the program. I think if they ask me, one thing that I'll take away from here is Mazi Uchenna. Keep saying it again and again. You learn, unlearn, and relearn, and have conversation. Conversation is very important. So if you're out there, today is Valentine's Day, please don't put yourself under unnecessary pressure. Learn, relearn, have a conversation with your partner, and let the world be a beautiful place for all of us to live. So until we come your way again, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, share, and even send your comments to the channel. Until I come your way next time, I remain Olaitan Akala. Bye.